All right, here we are. All right, Nat's poster session. This is Sunday, session 2, and we're going to roll on. So, Lisa Barksdale, you are up first. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you.
Lisa, can you tell us remind us of the title of your poster?
The title of my poster is Modules for Nodules, Patient-Driven Strategies for Vocal Budgeting.
Great. And so, Lisa, question we had in for you presented all these great sort of strategies for looking at, or for handling nodules. And the question we had in was, do you feel that these strategies are specific to that disorder? Or do you think that they could be used for, multiple disorders or multiple injuries?
Absolutely, they could be used for multiple injuries. It's just that population tends to need more attention given to vocal budgeting. Um, so that's, I mean, and the patients that I presented about were all had nodules.
Sure.
So I was just targeting that particular population, but absolutely anybody who needs to reduce their voice use because of a disorder should try some of those strategies.
Or possibly because of talking on Zoom all day.
Yes, that too. Or just because they're voice teachers in general.
Right. Have you seen an increase in patients by chance with everybody being online and doing all the loud talking online?
No, but that might have to do with the reduction of our hours for a while.
Ah,
So we're just now ramping back up. So there's no way to tell. Although some of the teachers that I used that reported on their situations actually reported improvement. But for instance, the high school English teacher noted improvement because she was talking less.
aha.
So it may be more for the voice teacher who is talking too loud, but the classroom teacher was talking less. And I actually she came into the office the other day. I actually got to see her tissue was less inflamed, and
Ah, excellent.
the size of the nodules were reduced. So
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your poster. It was really excellent. Excellent.
I enjoyed it.
All
Thank you.
right. Let's move on. Andre, Kurt, you're up.
Howdy.
How are you guys doing today? Good?
Doing great.
Um, I was fascinated by this consortium idea. So the question, though, that we got in, remind us of the title of your poster.
So the title is The Hear Bullet Consortium, a guide to creating, promoting, and performing a new 21st century song cycle.
And the song that you're particularly looking at is one of Kurt's, right?
Yeah, the song cycle that just won the 2020 Nats Art Song Composition competition.
Thank you for saying that. Wanted to point that out. So here was the question we actually got, and you both can take a little stab at it. There's often a challenge when presenting works on war themes to integrate them into a program that doesn't trivialize the seriousness of the work, but also finds a balance so that the program isn't just heavy and depressing. When presenting Here Bullet on a recital program, what other works do you imagine could be paired with it?
Oh. I'll let Kurt, you go first.
It's giving me the hard one. Uh, well, I was actually made aware that it was I believe it's the 250th anniversary, or yes, I believe that's right, 250th anniversary of Walt Whitman's birth. And so a lot of the singers that approached me specifically wanted to pair the Here Bullet setting with some Whitman settings as well. And that was kind of an appropriate pairing. A lot of other singers specifically sought out the piece because they either wanted to do this on war or even some were stretching into some social justice themes.
Sure, sure. I mean, definitely in where we are right now, for sure. Do you have any comment on that, Andre?
Yeah, I think it all depends on what you're looking to do in terms of how you want to program. If you want to program based upon certain thematic material, Here Bullet tackles a lot of, like Kurt was saying, social justice themes. It tackles suicide. It tackles a lot of heavy things that you can sort of dive deep into, while also, obviously um, having something lighter to pair with it. But if we're talking sort of musically speaking as well, using some different impressionist types pieces and sort of going in that direction will actually sort of really show the sort of as I think I wrote in my dissertation, showed the influences that Kurt had for the piece. So you could use Here Bullet as sort of a capstone and sort of lead into it with different stylistic influences that Kurt happened to have, and really make a night of just interesting sort of fluid music. Or you could do the whole new composers and just program a whole night of living guys or living guys, ladies, everyone, and just let that sort of be the way it should go.
Yeah, you could also do, if you wanted to just do American or North American composers, that also could be a thematic set as well.
Excellent. Really just flash question. Do you think that the consortium idea was valuable, and do you think it would be worth repeating, or something other people should try?
For me, definitely. Yes, most definitely. Because this was a new venture, I really didn't know what to expect. I thought this could really go either way. It surpassed my expectations in many ways. We had 25 plus singers who were lined up to perform the work on about 3 different continents. That's singers and audiences that I wouldn't otherwise have access to. I'd say about half of them actually materialized before the concert halls shut down, post COVID-19. I've had requests from singers who, because they were so interested in the work, want to engage me in future projects. The piece won the Nats Art Song Competition, as you mentioned. So this was a success, unqualified success, I would say.
Excellent. You guys, thank you so much. It's an excellent piece, and I look forward to hearing it more. I look forward to hearing it live one day. I've not heard it in person yet. So, all right, very good. Thank you, guys. Let's move on. Drake, we're on to you. Welcome.
Hi.
How are you today? Good?
Great.
Okay, so, Drake, remind us of the title of your poster on the Flowball.
It's called Studio Solutions with Flowball Intervention.
Yes, excellent. You guys did some very interesting things. Someone had written in asking if you could include a video demonstration during this portion. You don't happen to have the Flowball with you, do you?
I actually have one upstairs, but I have to make sure I know where the base is. I'd have to actually find the ball. So I don't have one with me at the moment. But I actually have videos that I could send you.
Okay, well, so you might have some people asking for them, because that was one question. But so I have a different question, sort of from my own curiosity, because I do a lot of research. You mentioned that you were measuring CQ as part of your measurements.
Right.
And I was curious, based on your results, how specifically were you measuring contact quotient?
With an electroglottograph.
Which one? I'm even getting more specific.
See, we were using the not the one that comes with the K-Pentax, but the other one.
Okay.
Just remind me of the company off the top of my head.
Sure, not the Glottal Enterprises one, but actually the one that one or the
the Glottal Enterprises, not the K-Pentax ones that goes at the same time.
Yeah.
That unifies.
I found your results on that fascinating. There was a degree of difference that I was kind of, I'd be interested to look at your data with you sometime.
Sure.
As a fellow EGG user, do you use the Flowball in studio yourself?
I do. Although when I started this research, this is not what I used the Flowball for originally. That wasn't I used it in a different manner for a different purpose, and then decided that I liked that, so I would try to see if I could get some sort of actual results out of it to see if it did what I thought it was doing.
Just real quick, so tell us about that.
So when I first started using the Flowball, what I found was that as people approached acoustic registration moments in their voice, they would have dramatic airflow shifts that they were unaware of. So what I found was that the Flowball was a really efficient tool to let them realize shifts in their flow that they were unaware of. a lot of times either right before or at the shift or just after, there would be these sudden changes where all of a sudden they'd be using no air, or right before they'd use these huge puffs of air, or right after there'd be a sudden jump in airflow. And that if you just simply gave them the ball and the visual feedback, they would change and realize, oh, I had no idea I was doing that. I wasn't trying to do that. That wasn't my plan at all. And so that's where I originally started using the flow ball. And then because I found it useful, I thought I'd try some experiments on it.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you for doing it. It's a lovely tool. If you've not ever, for those of you who are watching this video, if you've not used the flow ball, it is a very fun, inexpensive tool. All right. Thank you, Drake. Moving on, Kayla, you're up.
Hello.
Remind us of your title of your poster.
The title of my poster is Peering Inside the Period, Wavelet Decomposition as an Alternative to the Fourier Transform.
All right. This is a subject very near and dear to my heart. So here's a sort of bit of a quick deep dive question.
Absolutely.
For those of you who are watching who do know what a fast Fourier transform is, and you're familiar with looking at Voce Vista and these kind of signals, do you feel that wavelet analysis would do well being side by side an FFT in place of an FFT, and do you think one of the other might be better used in studio?
That's a really interesting question. I've actually talked to Bodo Moss, who's the developer of Voce Vista Video Pro, and to get his take on whether this is possible to kind of integrate with his system, because I actually do think that it's one of those, it's an acoustic analysis method that's an alternative to the Fourier transform, right? So I think it should be used side by side. It kind of gives a different window, so to speak, windowing pun, into
sorry. Okay,
yeah,
moving on.
into acoustic analysis, right? So I think another view is important. We usually see the harmonic bands just straight across, and it's really interesting to kind of see how they actually perform different power dynamics within their structure.
Absolutely. And so do you have any kind of timeline with Bodo on that its inclusion in the basic version of Voce Vista Video or not?
There's no timeline yet. I think that there's still, the analysis method is definitely still in its infancy. There are certainly like hundreds of different wavelets that could be used, and finding what's the most appropriate for what method is an important thing to work out. So there's no timeline yet, but I do see it. I see it in the future.
Bodo's busy working on getting video incorporated.
Yeah, he's got some tasks going on.
Yeah, and vibrato analysis. All right, very good. Thank you so much, Kayla.
Thank you.
All right, Daniel, you are up. Daniel, remind us of the title of your poster.
My poster was Three's Company, Fostering Collaborative Learning Through Partner Lessons.
All right, yes. This was from someone who wrote in. Absolutely loved this presentation. Would love to recreate in the future myself. How would you approach partner lessons this fall, considering our potential COVID restrictions or not?
Yes, I mean, when we switched midstream this past semester, I did set things up through Zoom to continue with the partner lessons that I had been doing since January. So the links for the lessons through the semester were given to both students for each. And I think that lasted like 3 days, maybe. It just became too much of a hassle to try and make sure that everybody was internet accessible and, with the timing. So I'm hoping now that students have a little bit more time to prepare for this whole idea of doing online lessons. I mean, I guess that's the first part. That's what I'm planning to do in the fall, is not moving back to my studio quite yet. And through an online format, just having both people participate in that same way. I think one of the things we are trying to do at my university is set up some larger classroom times available, so that once every month or twice a month, hopefully, I would be able to teach in one of the larger rooms and at least get to see people. And in that case, it'd be easy to put one person in one corner, me on one side, and the partner there as well. Beyond that, I haven't really come up with any extraordinary ideas.
Sure. I will applaud you for trying this. It's actually, I'm thankful to see somebody actually having some ideas down on paper, because 2 of my students actually approached me about doing this year. And I was like, sure, let's try it. We didn't do every week that way. I think we sort of did every other week. And then one of those students went for the spring and went off and did the Disney summer program, and then we didn't continue it. But so anyway, no, it's a really great idea for collaboration. We've heard other colleagues about open studio policies and this kind of thing, but you're really taking that really a step farther, I think. Especially with, you talked a little bit about, doing it with other studios, which I really applaud you for.
Yeah, I think when I'm doing it with other studios, there is an extra time element for the instructor.
Yeah.
Because when I'm doing partner lessons, it's no different to me. It's 2 students. I still meet with them both. But when I'm doing it with another colleague, the expectation is that I would go observe their lessons as well. And that is an extra hour of my week. So when I have done that here, it doesn't happen every week. There's just no way to make that kind of a regular thing, but it's so informative because, for me personally, I've felt that I've become much less anxious when people observe my teaching, because it just becomes part of the routine. And it's not, that once every 3 years, somebody comes in and writes an evaluation of what I'm doing. And I think, oh my gosh, if I say something wrong, this is my one moment here.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the open studio policy that you mentioned, from what I've heard from other people, there's a lot of schools that do that.
Yeah.
And, it's just not always that consistent, then maybe is the best word for it, in terms of the participation. So.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah. All right. Mr. LeGrare could not join us today for his presentation on gospel singing. So we are on to Karen. Karen, remind us the title of your poster.
Recurring vestibular stimulation and an ideal performing state.
Absolutely excellent. So one of the questions we had in was, with all this great information that you presented on, with the ear and the brain, how do you specifically incorporate sort of this information that you presented into your sort of day-to-day teaching?
Oh, it actually is very much a part of my day-to-day teaching, because we're dealing with an element of audiomotor function. Singing is audiomotor behavior. And the feedback loop goes back to the inner ear through tissue and bone, primarily, less from acoustic space. So that information is being processed constantly. That is, the vibrations that we're hearing and feeling are also being processed by the vestibular system. So what I suggest, what I found and suggest, and haven't found anything to prove otherwise, is that when we're singing or inner singing, I didn't say that in this information, it works for mental rehearsal too. If you start doing some inner singing, you're going to find your body change. You're going to breathe a little differently. Your posture is going to respond. And you're going to notice that that information is already being processed, even if you're not actually even vibrating the vestibules. And that is because it's both a motor and a sensory system. Mm. So it's there for you for the entire loop of the cycle.
Excellent. Now, just out of curiosity, how much of that do you sort of purposefully make your students aware of? Or is this just more a thing you'd like voice teachers to know?
Well, we might do a balancing task while singing and talk about place and space awareness. So any of those proprioceptive things that teachers of singing commonly use is actually asking the vestibular system to work. Yeah. So remember that's our spatial cognition system. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely fantastic.
So anything that you say, hey, notice your space around you, above you, below you, beside you. Do you hear a sound off in the distance? Okay, now that's your inner singing sound. Transfer your attention to your inner singing. And that would give that nice, easy segue right into incorporating your system into your singing.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I love it. I love it. It's not a topic I knew much about, so I was very, very much enjoyed it. All right. Thank you very much, Karen. All right, Catherine. Hello. Tell us about your voice as identity. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. The poster title is Voice as Identity, Implementing Assistive Technology in Vocal Performance.
So tell us what assistive technology is.
Yeah, so assistive technology would be for people who don't actually have the ability to speak. So this is used by the non-speaking community, and the assistive devices that are used vary depending on what kind of mobility one has. But it generally, what you would think of would be the Stephen Hawking voice, and whatever kind of mobility creates that ability to choose either a symbol or a word or even a letter.
And so
it varies.
Really, we're talking about like a voice generator, essentially. I'm just curious, like those of us in sort of voice ped circles, like a lot of us use MADA as like a noise sort of generator, or, you know, sort of model vocal tract. Some of us are now using the sound generator in the new versions of Voce Vista Video. How does something like that, does this device incorporate elements of what they use in those sort of modeling softwares, or is it really something that is just totally unrelated?
This is why this is so exciting, that these sides are kind of talking to each other, because it's not necessarily on parallel tracks, but we're kind of headed in the same direction.
Yeah.
It's just that these voices are, they're customized for people from this company, Vocal ID, where we take we give our vocal donations, and then they are paired with someone who matches our vocal profile. And of course, when we talk about, you know, our own concept as vocalists and educators of a vocal profile differ, but are also, again, on these kind of parallel tracks, because we don't think about a voice as feathery. We don't want to sound like gravel, that kind of thing. But, you know, we have to think about things the way the outside world does, not just in our own incredible pedagogic bubble.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, this is the first I was sort of have heard of bringing this idea into a voice ped world.
Sure.
So I'm kind of excited by it, to be completely honest, mostly because I'd like to have my own little Stephen Hawking voice, maybe just to carry around and talk to people for me. But no, really, really, absolutely excellent.
Well, anyone can bank their voice. That's the kind of cruelty of this, is that we don't know if we're going to need it in the future. Yeah. And there are, of course, security issues that you know. But what we were just talking about, Karen's work, I mean, is so fascinating, because the way that this all was conceived of was that I was actually voiceless from just a different virus, years ago, and I had to learn a piece, and it was a solo vocal piece. So there was nothing to help me. There's no recordings a lot of times in contemporary music. So I just learned it. And then I got to a week before the performance, and I was singing it and vocalizing and working the mechanism up. And you know, it was amazing. So when I got into this performance in 2018 at the American Philosophical Society and performed this piece again with a few years under my belt, there was Ripple Patel of Vocal ID, and we just, you know, fireworks.
Fantastic. Well, what a great connection. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, and I look forward to seeing where you guys go with it.
Thank you. Yeah.
From moving forward.
Thank you. Because of the current virus, we'll be pushing the premiere of The Other Side of Silence back a year, but we should be seeing it in Philly in 2021.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, yes, things have all sort of gotten pushed back, haven't they? Bravo. Okay, great. Sherry, we are on to you.
Yes.
Sherry, this, I thought, presentation was very timely. To remind us of the title of your poster.
It's Creating Singers Without Borders, How to Design a Globally Inclusive Vocal Pedagogy.
Yeah. Sorry, I'd lost my place. I had everything. I had to flip a page. Sorry. Too many papers, everybody. This is why when I do podcasts, I don't take notes and we just talk. Because when I have notes, I lose where I am. Like I said, I think this is an incredibly poignant topic. So when you were sort of presenting the idea of dealing with this through the lens of sort of classical voice technique, though, and I was curious if that element of it ends up interfering with any native languages or challenges, not interfering, but challenges that some native languages create. Like I've taught some Chinese students, and even teaching them, one of the things I've done with them is teach them Chinese art songs so that I can get a sense of their native speech patterns. But have you noticed any sort of diction things that end up sort of infiltrating the classical technique, maybe ideas that you're coming at?
Well, sure, but every language does that, including American English. Every language does that, so that it can have a plus and a minus effect. Like Chinese students really get the nasal really quickly because that's a huge part of their cultural language. The Arab language is really quite amenable to a lot of the sounds. I've used the example of there's like 4 different sounds for the K sound, but it's very similar to German in that, but maybe there's even 5. And so they do German quite easily because they have k, ha, and they've even got one that's it's almost like a cough. And it's very far, it's even deeper than German. And you hear these kids talking in the hall and you're going, wow, I know that sound. I know that sound. And they really take quite easily to German. And in fact, I found that living overseas that most of my students speak 3 or 4 different languages fluently. And that is, what a joy that is to work with these kids, because I don't ever have to try to talk them into learning a French art song. They're say, yes, I want to learn this. And many times I'll say, you did great with that. Where do you want to go next? And I kind of let them guide their own way because they know very well where they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think that you'll maybe look to publish some resources along with this that might be helpful to the community overall?
I do have a handout that I could make available. I'm not sure yet through this media how we're going to do that, but I do have a PDF handout that I could make available. And it's really very basic techniques. But I found in observing some Western teachers, like master clinicians and people that I would have come work with the students, that many of them make assumptions about students, cultural assumptions that are simply not true.
Yeah.
For instance, a young man who's singing a German song I mentioned in the video presentation that I made. He speaks German fluently, but he'd never been exposed to German lieder. And I'm sitting here going, what a travesty. And he's going, bring it on, because he understood every word that was being sung. And he's a sort of a baritone, maybe bass baritone. So I've introduced him to Thomas Quasthoff and others, of course, now. And he's in heaven. He's emailing me almost daily. What else can I hear? And this is a kid who plays the guitar and also has a rock band. So we make assumptions about kids. For instance, that I had a teacher work with this, not this student, but one similar, who said, what can you tell me about the German song cycle? And the kid looked at him like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And the teacher's perspective was, how can you sing German lieder if you can't completely understand the song cycle? My perspective is, why does he need to know that? Why does he need to know it to sing one German song beautifully? I'm not against people learning the German song cycle. No, not at all. But in certain cultures, you need to make sure that you're serving their needs and not yours.
Oh man, that's so good. That's so good. That's so good. Thank you for your work. That's really, really great. All right, everyone, we made it. Y'all were wonderful. So come to the conference and enjoy seeing all of our colleagues here on video screens for the next few days after a little week's time, and we'll all and hopefully in 2022 in Chicago we'll all actually get together and have a nice lovely time together in real life. So anyway, thank you all so much for your work. You all are rock stars. and you deserve medals for the work you've put in making this happen, okay? Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Nick.
Oh,
Thanks,
no,
Nick.
don't worry about me.
You're amazing.
All right. Bye, everybody.